I stood frozen in the doorway of my parents' lavish Bellevue mansion, the glittering lights and elegant laughter making my head spin. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above tables dressed with pristine white silk and delicate arrangements of oversized peonies, their fragrance thick in the air. A violin hummed softly from the corner, serenading guests in designer gowns and tailored suits, each holding champagne glasses filled with bubbles worth more than my monthly rent. But tonight, I wasn't here to admire their extravagance. My grip tightened around the wrinkled medical file in my hands, its cold, clinical words echoing relentlessly in my mind. Emergency heart surgery required. Total cost, $50,000. Immediate action necessary. My throat was dry, my heart pounding as I stepped hesitantly forward. Through the crowd, I spotted my mother, Vivian, dazzling in a pearl-colored dress, diamonds shimmering at her throat. She caught sight of me and stiffened immediately, her eyes turning icy cold, her polished smile fading into tight-lipped irritation as she approached. "Julia," she whispered sharply, her voice soft yet cutting like a knife. "Do you realize what day this is? This is your brother Brandon's pre-wedding celebration, planned months ago. Must you make a scene right now?" I swallowed hard, struggling to maintain my composure as shame and desperation burned through me. Quietly, I opened the medical file, holding it up like a plea for mercy. "Mom," I whispered, my voice breaking slightly. "Lily, your granddaughter, is in the hospital. She needs surgery in 3 days, or we might lose her. I'm not asking for much. Please, just help me this once." She glanced briefly at the file, her gaze quickly shifting away, indifferent as if I'd just shown her something trivial. Her eyes flickered to Brandon, who stood nearby with his fiancée, Kelsey, sipping champagne as though he hadn't a care in the world. "Brandon," Vivian said coolly, her tone dismissive, "your sister believes it's our responsibility to fund her life decisions. What do you think about that?" Brandon smiled, a cold, humorless grin, lifting his glass in a mock toast. "Julia," he said calmly, loud enough for others nearby to overhear, "we've already spent $500,000 on this wedding. Your daughter, your responsibility. Don't make your problems ours." A ripple of amused whispers passed through the small circle around us, each sound slicing deeper into my soul. My cheeks burned with humiliation, and my heart sank beneath the weight of their cruel laughter. I turned quickly, pushing past well-dressed guests who parted with quiet murmurs. I stepped out into the Seattle drizzle, cold rain mingling with my silent tears, soaking through my thin coat. I vowed right then, shivering in the darkness, clutching my daughter's medical report against my chest, that I would never again beg these people for help. But little did I know, life would soon force them back into my path. Only this time, they would be the ones begging, pleading for my mercy. And by then, everything had changed. After driving home in numb silence, I stepped into our modest apartment in downtown Seattle. Daniel rushed over, his eyes filled with hope, quickly fading when he saw my face. "They said no, didn't they?" he murmured softly, pulling me into a gentle embrace. I didn't answer right away, letting the silence speak for itself. Finally, I whispered, "They said, Lily's our responsibility. They refused to help her." His jaw tightened, eyes briefly flashing anger, but he said nothing. He simply held me tighter, grounding me when I felt like I might collapse under the crushing weight of despair. That night, sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lily's pale face, her fragile body lying motionless on the hospital bed. Her heart was weakening day by day, each moment precious and slipping through her fingers like sand. In the dim glow of my phone screen, I watched the numbers. We'd managed to gather barely half of the $50,000 we needed. Every penny counted, but we were still painfully short. By morning, our desperation had driven us to a harsh decision. Daniel listed our old Honda for sale, the car that had taken us on countless road trips, holding precious memories within its scratched paint. I sold my work equipment, my design software, my drafting tablet, leaving myself with just the bare essentials. We stripped our home bare, willing to sacrifice everything for one chance to save Lily's life. But it wasn't enough. Sitting on the floor of the empty living room, staring blankly at the walls, I started researching high-interest loans, dangerous, desperate decisions I knew we couldn't afford, but my heart left me no choice. That was when Daniel's parents, Elaine and George, arrived unannounced. They walked slowly through our now empty home, their eyes soft with understanding. Elaine knelt beside me, gently taking my hand, her eyes filling with quiet determination. "Julia, listen to me," she said softly, squeezing my hand reassuringly. "George and I discussed it last night. We're selling the house." My heart stopped. "No, Elaine, you can't." She gently silenced my protest with a shake of her head. "Julia, it's just a house, just walls, just bricks. Lily is our granddaughter. Nothing matters more than her life. We'll manage somehow, renting a small place. But Lily, she only has one chance." My vision blurred with tears, gratitude mixing painfully with shame. Elaine and George weren't wealthy people. They'd lived modestly their entire lives. Yet here they stood, willing to sacrifice their only security without hesitation. I couldn't speak. Instead, silent tears streamed down my face, landing on Elaine's gentle hands, hands that had always comforted Lily, knitting sweaters, baking cookies, never hesitating to love her fully, even though we weren't connected by blood. Within days, the money was secured, and Lily underwent surgery. Those hours of waiting were the longest and darkest of my life. Daniel paced anxiously beside me, his hand clutching mine as we prayed silently. Finally, when the surgeon emerged with a tired smile and the words, "The surgery was a success," my knees gave way. Daniel caught me, holding me steady as relief poured through us both, washing away months of fear and desperation. Yet, as we stood together, watching Lily sleep peacefully, I knew my journey wasn't over. The people who'd abandoned us, who'd chosen extravagance over empathy, luxury over love, had shown me clearly who they truly were. From this moment forward, I swore never to forget, not out of bitterness, but to honor those who had given everything, while those bound by blood had given nothing at all. And soon, without even realizing it, I'd begin building a life powerful enough to ensure I'd never need their help again. After Lily's surgery, life didn't magically turn easy. The financial strain had drained us completely, but instead of breaking me, it ignited something fierce within. I woke up early each morning, before the Seattle sky turned from dark velvet to a muted gray, pouring every ounce of energy into my design studio, Lily Space. I wasn't just designing spaces anymore. Each project became personal, a testament to resilience, a quiet promise whispered to myself late at night. I would never again depend on those who turned their backs on us. Months passed swiftly, each filled with sleepless nights and endless meetings. I took jobs that were risky, challenging, projects no other designer dared to attempt. Slowly, my reputation grew, whispered from client to client, spreading beyond Seattle's borders. Local media picked up my story, first praising my designs, then curious about the woman behind them. One rainy Thursday afternoon, a producer from a popular local TV station called. She'd stumbled upon my story through social media. A mother once rejected by her family during her darkest hour, now an inspiring entrepreneur reshaping the city's most neglected spaces. "Julia, people need to hear your story," she urged gently. "Your journey is powerful. You could inspire others who felt forgotten or abandoned." At first, I hesitated. The wounds from my family's betrayal were still raw, hidden beneath carefully built walls of determination. But as I watched Lily playing happily in our small backyard, laughter ringing bright in the evening air, I knew I couldn't remain silent. My pain could become someone else's hope. A few weeks later, I sat nervously under bright studio lights, camera lenses trained steadily on me, as the host asked gently, "Julia, tell us what inspired you to build Lily Space Studio." I took a deep breath, my voice calm yet strong, my gaze fixed on the camera as though speaking directly to every person watching from behind screens. When my daughter was gravely ill, I asked my own family for help. They chose their $500,000 wedding over saving her life. That moment taught me that love isn't always guaranteed by blood. Sometimes it comes from those who have nothing left to give, but still give anyway. I built Lily Space not only for Lily, but for everyone who feels they've nowhere to turn. I learned you don't need those who abandoned you. You just need to remember who stood by you when nobody else would. The interview aired that weekend and quickly went viral. Messages poured in from strangers, sharing their own experiences. Stories of rejection, isolation, and quiet triumph. But among the messages of gratitude and hope, something else happened, something I hadn't fully expected. People quickly connected the dots. They uncovered the identities of my parents, Vivian and Richard Bennett, prominent figures whose business depended heavily on maintaining their flawless public image. And of course, Brandon, the golden boy who once proudly displayed his $300,000 engagement ring online, boasting of extravagance while casually rejecting the life of his own niece. Soon, their meticulously crafted image shattered, falling apart piece by painful piece. The outrage spread swiftly through social media, hitting the headlines of gossip websites and local news. Within days, Brandon's fiancée, Kelsey, publicly ended their engagement, condemning him openly with a single viral post. A man who can laugh while a child fights for life isn't a man worth marrying. Their reputation crumbled, along with their finances and pride. Yet, even as I watched from afar, I felt no triumph. Instead, a quiet sadness lingered, a reminder of how deep the wounds of family could run. I had rebuilt my life, not from bitterness, but from sheer determination to never depend on them again. But life has a cruel sense of irony, and it wasn't long before my phone rang, the caller ID showing a number I never thought I'd see again. My mother's voice, once sharp and unyielding, was now fragile, trembling softly through the receiver. "Julia," she whispered hesitantly, I never wanted to bother you again, but we're losing everything. Please, can you help us?" I closed my eyes briefly, absorbing her words, feeling a lifetime of emotions flood my chest. The tables had finally turned, and now, in this moment of quiet reckoning, the choice was mine. The meeting room at Lily Space Studio was bathed in pale, winter sunlight streaming through large windows overlooking Seattle's mist-covered waterfront. Everything around me was polished and elegant. The minimalist decor, modern artwork, even the carefully arranged fresh flowers in delicate glass vases. This was my world now, a far cry from the vulnerable woman who once stood begging outside a mansion door. On the polished conference table in front of me sat a sleek black briefcase containing exactly $200,000, the exact amount my parents had asked for. I'd withdrawn it from my own savings, fully prepared to give it to them, though even now, doubt gnawed relentlessly at the edges of my resolve. At precisely noon, the office door opened, and my parents stepped quietly into the room. My breath caught at the sight of them, barely recognizing the proud figures who once looked down on me. Richard, once towering and confident, appeared diminished, his shoulders stooped, his face lined deeply with worry and shame. Vivian, once impeccably elegant, wore a coat clearly outdated, her dark hair threaded heavily with gray. They hesitated in the doorway, unable to meet my eyes as they approached, and slowly took seats opposite me, silence hanging heavy between us. Finally, I broke it softly. "How are you both?" My voice sounded distant, surprisingly calm even to myself. Vivian glanced briefly at me, eyes quickly shifting downward as if afraid of the truth they might reveal. We're managing," she whispered. "Thank you for agreeing to see us." Richard cleared his throat awkwardly, finally looking up at me. His eyes, once cold and critical, now carried the weary weight of a man who'd lost everything, including his dignity. "Julia, we have nowhere else to turn," he began hesitantly. I made mistakes, so many. I risked the business to maintain appearances, and I lost everything. This money, this is the only thing standing between us and complete ruin." He paused, gathering courage. "I know we have no right to ask you for anything. You owe us nothing, especially after what we've done. But we're desperate. We're asking not as your parents, but simply as people who've hit rock bottom." My gaze drifted slowly toward the briefcase on the table between us. I reached out, gently tracing its smooth surface, memories flooding my mind. The humiliation at Brandon's celebration, the icy dismissal, Lily's fragile breaths in the hospital bed. Each thought sharpened my resolve, reminding me exactly why I was here. "Dad," I began quietly, "when Lily needed surgery, I begged you for help. I would have paid back every cent. I would have done anything. Do you remember what Brandon said? Your daughter, your responsibility. And Mom, do you remember your words? Family doesn't mean sacrificing yourself for someone else." Vivian flinched visibly, her head bowing further in shame. "I haven't forgotten," I continued softly. "Yet here you are, asking me, the daughter you rejected, to sacrifice for you." A heavy silence filled the room. Finally, I opened the briefcase, the neatly stacked money revealed beneath the dim sunlight. "I thought about turning you away," I admitted slowly, feeling their tense gazes fixed on the cash. "But I won't become like you. I won't measure life in transactions. This money is yours." Richard's shoulders sank with relief, but Vivian's eyes widened with disbelief. My voice steadied, growing firm. "But understand this clearly. The moment you take this money, our relationship ends. This is not forgiveness. This is closure. You taught me family doesn't sacrifice for each other. But today, I'm proving you wrong. I'm sacrificing not because we're family, but because I refuse to be the same as you." Richard opened his mouth to respond, but couldn't manage a single word. Vivian reached out hesitantly, her fingers trembling as she closed the briefcase, tears gathering in her eyes. Slowly, they rose from their seats, silence lingering heavily in the air. Without another word, they turned and walked toward the door. Neither looked back as the door softly clicked shut behind them. For a long moment, I sat motionless, letting the stillness surround me. Finally, I released the breath I'd been holding. I'd imagined this day countless times, expecting satisfaction or perhaps sorrow. But now, alone in this bright room, all I felt was a quiet, profound calm. The final chapter had closed, not with drama, not with anger, but simply with the quiet dignity of knowing I'd chosen a path that was uniquely my own. Yet, deep in my heart, one question lingered. Would I ever see them again? And if so, could I ever truly forgive? That evening, I sat quietly on the sofa at home, watching through the window as the Seattle skyline gradually faded beneath a curtain of soft, silvery rain. Lily lay curled beside me, breathing gently in her sleep, her tiny fingers wrapped securely around mine. Daniel entered silently, gently sitting beside us, his presence steady and reassuring. "I heard what happened," he murmured softly, gently brushing a strand of hair from my face. "You okay?" "I'm not sure," I whispered truthfully, feeling a quiet heaviness in my chest. "I gave them the money, Daniel, but I also gave them my goodbye. Was I too harsh?" He shook his head slowly, pulling me gently against him. "You did what was right, not easy, but right. You showed more compassion than they ever did." A quiet knock on our door interrupted our conversation. Elaine and George stepped in, Elaine carrying a tray of homemade cookies, George with a warm smile that instantly brightened the room. Elaine carefully placed the cookies on the table, taking one long look at Lily, and then turned toward me. "Julia, dear, you look exhausted. You did the right thing today, you know," Elaine reassured gently. "Sometimes letting go is the bravest thing we can do." I met her gaze, warmth spreading through my chest, grateful beyond words for these two gentle souls who'd always stood beside me. Elaine reached out and squeezed my hand, her touch reassuringly firm. George nodded softly, eyes shining with quiet pride. "We couldn't have asked for a better daughter-in-law," he said warmly, his voice gentle. "Family isn't about who shares your blood. It's about who shares your heart." His words resonated deeply within me, washing away the last traces of uncertainty I'd felt. We spent that evening surrounded by warmth and quiet laughter, a simple joy I'd learned to treasure. When Elaine and George finally left, the house felt lighter, calmer somehow, as if a lingering shadow had finally vanished. Days turned into weeks, and life slowly found its rhythm again. Lily thrived, growing stronger every day, her laughter filling every corner of our home. One evening, as we sat around our kitchen table, Lily climbed into my lap, gently placing her small hand against my cheek. "Mommy," she said softly, her wide eyes serious, "last night I dreamed you were a superhero. You flew into the sky and saved me. I wasn't scared anymore." Tears filled my eyes as I held her close, her words touching something deep within me. Daniel smiled gently from across the table, his gaze filled with love. "She's right, you know," he whispered warmly. "You've always been our superhero." I smiled back, shaking my head slightly, feeling a quiet, powerful strength blossom in my chest. I wasn't extraordinary. I was simply a mother who'd faced impossible decisions, a daughter who'd learned painful truths, and a woman who chose to rise above bitterness. Months later, I quietly tracked down the new owners of Elaine and George's beloved home, the very home they'd sacrificed without hesitation to save Lily's life. After weeks of careful negotiation, I managed to buy it back, never breathing a word about it until Elaine's birthday arrived. That afternoon, as we walked together toward their old street, Elaine paused, confusion clouding her face. "Julia, dear, why are we here?" I gently placed the keys into her trembling hand, watching comprehension slowly dawn in her eyes. "We're home, Elaine," I whispered softly. "You gave up everything for us. Now it's our turn to give it back." She stared at me silently, tears streaming quietly down her face. Beside her, George squeezed her hand tightly, his own eyes bright with emotion. Inside the house, Lily ran straight toward the kitchen, calling out excitedly, "Grandma! Grandpa! This means pancakes every morning again, right?" Elaine laughed through her tears, kneeling to embrace Lily tightly, the warmth of their joy filling every inch of the home. Watching them, I knew this was exactly what family meant: unconditional love, sacrifice without hesitation, bonds built by choice rather than blood. As I stood quietly, Daniel slipped his hand into mine, leaning close. "You did this," he murmured gently. "You made it through everything. I'm proud of you." I nodded, a quiet peace settling within me. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't triumph. It was simply healing, the powerful, gentle kind that comes from moving forward without forgetting those who stood beside me at my lowest. From now on, every morning would begin with love, laughter, and the knowledge that family was defined not by blood, but by the strength of hearts willing to stay when the rest of the world turned away. Time moved forward, steady and gentle, like the rhythm of waves along Seattle's shoreline. Our lives blossomed quietly, beautifully, rich not in extravagance, but in love and gratitude. Lily grew stronger, her bright laughter echoing through Elaine and George's cozy home each morning. Daniel continued supporting me silently, steadfastly, his love grounding me through every storm. Lily's space studio flourished, reaching heights I'd once never dared imagine. The magazine interviews, the media coverage, it had all faded into comfortable normalcy. But one afternoon, as I sat quietly at my desk, an unexpected phone call pulled me sharply back into the past. It was Brandon. "Julia," he began hesitantly, voice stripped of the arrogance that once defined him. "I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but please just give me a minute." I hesitated, my heart tightening slightly, but finally answered softly, "Go ahead." He took a shaky breath. Everything fell apart after the wedding was canceled. The business, our parents, our family, it's all gone. I thought being successful meant never needing anyone, especially not you. But I was wrong. I've lost everything. I have nothing left, Julia. I listened silently, the raw honesty in his voice cutting deep. I no longer hated Brandon. In truth, I pitied him. He had been raised to chase appearances, taught that love was conditional and success purely superficial. But pity wasn't forgiveness. "Brandon," I answered quietly, feeling an odd sense of calm, "you chose this. All I ever wanted was to belong, to feel loved. Instead, you made sure I felt worthless. I wish you no harm, but I also can't save you from the life you built. It's time you faced it alone like I once did." He was silent, and then a soft whisper, "I understand. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry." I hung up gently, exhaling a long breath. There was no satisfaction, just quiet closure. I'd learned forgiveness doesn't always mean reunion. Sometimes it simply means releasing your pain and moving forward. The years passed gently after that. Elaine and George filled Lily's childhood with warmth, wisdom, and endless pancakes. My parents never reached out again, and I made peace with that quiet emptiness. Family, I'd learned, wasn't always something you were born into. Sometimes it was something you created from love, trust, and loyalty. One warm spring evening, as the golden sunset painted Seattle's sky, Lily crawled into my lap again, now older but still with the innocence of childhood. She gazed up at me, her voice soft but confident. "Mommy, do you remember when I dreamed you were a superhero? Well, now I know why. You saved me. You saved all of us." I hugged her tightly, tears stinging my eyes as I whispered back, "No, sweetie, you saved me." She smiled gently, placing her hand over my heart. Then we saved each other. As darkness fell over our home that night, I lay quietly beside Daniel, listening to his gentle breathing, feeling an overwhelming gratitude I'd never known before. I'd faced pain, betrayal, loss, but I'd emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Today, I no longer wake up burdened by the past. I wake up thankful for Lily's laughter echoing down the hallway, for the gentle strength of Daniel's presence beside me, for Elaine and George's unconditional love. Most of all, I'm thankful for the life we'd built from ashes, a life defined not by revenge, but by resilience, love, and healing. In the quiet hours before dawn, as I look toward the horizon, I know with absolute certainty I didn't need revenge. I only needed courage to rise, to heal, and to forgive without losing myself. And in the end, that was more powerful than revenge could ever be.